Hi friends, welcome back. So today I'm going to do some more mini canvases. I have been wanting to do these for a little while and I've been working on so many big things that I haven't really needed to do a study for that I just haven't done any. And you know what? It's time to do some mini canvases. So I've done a couple little sketches. I have some ideas of stuff that I want to work on, especially more as I get into 2025. And yeah, let's sit down and we'll paint some mini canvases, and I will tell you a little bit about what I have in mind for next year as far as where my paintings will be taking me. Cool. I will change the camera angle and let's get started. So I had really been wanting to work on some mini canvases lately, but I have been so focused on some of my bigger pieces, and I'm working on another pretty ambitious project at the moment that may or may not be done by the end of the year. If it is, I'll show you. If it's not, you'll see it in 2025. But there was a day about a week ago that I just really wanted to work on something a little bit easier. So I finally found a couple of reference photos and I sat down and put together a couple of sketches, and then I could actually do some mini canvases. I think a lot of the time with the minis, they're intended to be studies, but if I am in the middle of kind of a big project that I've already done, that I already know how to do the parts of, like the one I'm doing right now has several elements from paintings I've done in the past, though those paintings have been a little while ago at this point. But it's stuff that I've done before, so I haven't really felt the need to do studies. So trying to come up with what I want to put on a mini canvas when I don't need to do a study at the moment it's a little bit tricky. And so for this one, I kind of had to really think about it and think about, well, what do I want to paint more of next year? Because as we're already this far into November, I don't know that I'm going to have the time to start any more big projects this year. So you got to think about, well, what do you want to start painting next year? What do you want to see more of in your own projects next year? And I came up with two things. One of them I've already discussed with you guys, which is water. I really want to get better at painting water. So the next piece, the next mini canvas that I'll show you is one that has some water features in it. And then I also want to get better about doing, I want to start painting like smaller critters. So in this case, in case you couldn't tell, I'm painting a snail. And while I'm painting the snail, I also want to work on some more different plant shapes because I have my favorites and I get in a bit of a rut with those favorites. And I really want to get better about painting more organic shapes very naturally. There are a lot of plant shapes that I struggle with. I think a lot of it is that I need to get some different brushes that are better at doing the plant shapes, but the brushes that I have are sufficient. Like, I can do all of the plant shapes. I just need to actually practice and work on honing that skill a little bit more. So that's probably what's going to be in a few of these study pieces moving forward. I will be doing more different plant shapes, unique plant shapes, and plant shapes that fit in different settings. So for this one, I wanted to work on almost like a ferny shape, but not too ferny. Ferns are very feathery, and I didn't want this quite as feathery as a normal fern, but I still kind of am. My inspiration is the fern without it being necessarily a fern, if you know what I mean. So for this one, I am just, the background is just a plain green, but then the two things that I'm working on would be the plant and the snail. And honestly, I think both end up coming out really well. I am very pleased with the plants in this one. Again, it's not a shape that I normally do, so I was kind of surprised that it came out so easily. I prefer the branch that's under the snail. I think that one came out really well, and the other one came out okay. And here I'm just adding a little bit of a highlight color. With it just being the one color, it always looks flat. You have to add at least one highlight or low light to a plant, in my opinion, or else they just don't look right. Plants are always varied and multicolor, so it really makes sense to just add some variation in your tones. And then I needed to let that dry so that I could actually paint the snail. So here is the one that I am, this is actually, I have a reference photo that I've had for over a year at this point, and it's an absolutely beautiful picture, and I just haven't tried it. I think every time I look at it, it's just a little bit daunting, which is weird because it's a style that I've done before, but for some reason this one is just a little bit scary for me. I don't super know how to explain why it's so like weird and scary, but sometimes they just are. So for this one, I kind of came up with my own style of tree, and I picked my own variation on color, but otherwise the composition is very similar to my reference photo. And I think that this one came out relatively well at the end, but it's not my favorite. I think I could do better. And I think that a lot of it was just that a little bit of fear getting to me and being like, can I do this? Because I wanted there to be water, but I wanted it to be that kind of swampy water where there's kind of like, they're not mangroves. What kind of tree is it? Those trees that get drowned out by water all the time. I don't know. I don't know my tree types very well. But I want to get better at doing different types of trees in general and doing different types of landscapes. I have one landscape style that I do, and I really want to get better at doing others. I want to, especially next year, I really want to push myself and start adding more landscape styles to my repertoire. I don't want to be fully priced into only doing one. I think that it is better to be able to do multiple, and being that I am creating this story with my artwork, I think that it very much makes sense to have different landscapes and to have different environments in which parts of the story are taking place. So this one is kind of fulfilling that. So it's supposed to be a little bit more swampy, and I like it and I don't at the same time. It came out well. It came out fine. It doesn't look bad at all. It's not exactly what I wanted, so there might be another study of this sort next year. But in reality, like, it came out pretty well. Here's where I am adding in the water. I'm trying to just make sure that the brush strokes are going the other direction. So the sky is going vertically, and then the water is going horizontal. And on this small of a canvas, it's really hard to make sure that you've only painted in one direction. And then my colors just kept blending when I didn't want them to, and it was more of a challenge than I anticipated. I think it probably would have been easier if I had just painted the whole thing one color and then come in and added the reflections later. but I wanted to do it like this, so this is how I did it. And again, in the end, I do like how it came out, but it's not my favorite. And again, it's a study, so it's not one that needs to be 100% perfect. This is probably a composition that you will see again in the future. Like I said, I really like this composition with the trees being submerged in the water and you getting that ripply reflection. But again, with the plant shapes, like I was talking about with the last canvas, I want to be able to add like those reedy plants over the water, because that is kind of what you get in this climate. And I did not feel confident enough while I was painting this to be able to do that. So I did not. But I do still think that it came out nicely, and it does look like water. So the primary goal was achieved. But my goal in future, next year, would be that I do want to do a piece that's similar to this. I want to start painting more birds. I have done a couple of birds. You've seen my tufted titmouse and ones like that. But I do want to start doing some more birds. I know they can be a lot more difficult than some of the furrier critters, but I don't want to be limited to land animals. So I want to start doing birds, and I might delve into more sea creatures. I've done jellyfish a few times, but I haven't really done anything other than that. So next year you might see some studies from me by way of sea creatures. I also got and I've had it for a year at this point, I got an anatomy book, human anatomy book. And I used to, and I'm sure that I've shown them on videos at some point, but it would have been a little while now. I used to do paintings of trees that were shaped to look like a person. I want to start doing stuff like that again to add kind of like tree spirits, sort of. Because again, I am trying to keep my world pretty fantasy, and tree spirits are a pretty easy way to do that. So that's a thing I want to really get back into. I've only really dabbled in female anatomy so far, so I really want to start doing male as well. Obviously female is easier because I am female, so I can kind of look in a mirror and be like, right, that's what I look like, and use myself as a reference. But it's harder to do that with male because I'm not male. And it's awkward if you ask your brother to pose for you. But anyway, I have all sorts of plans for future paintings, and that will cause me to have to do more little study paintings. So definitely expect to see more mini canvas paintings from me next year, just because they're a really good way for me to practice. And again, these will, when the website launches, these will be available. As long as they're not active studies for a piece that I'm currently working on, I can list them on the website. If you guys ever see one that you want, I am happy to put a hold on it for you, or if you want it sooner rather than later, I'm also happy to work out a deal where you can purchase them now. Most of the ones that you've seen are, while they are study pieces, they're not active. They're not ones that are related to a piece that I'm working on right now. So if there are mini canvases that you've seen me do that you like, feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to talk to you about pricing and stuff like that. So I did make sure to do different colors for each tree trunk. And this is kind of where I feel like I wish that I had spent a little bit more time on coloring in, or shading rather, the tree trunks, because I really wish that I had spent more time thinking about which one was in the back and which one was in the front, and figuring out what color each one needed to be, and then actually taking the time to do some variation in color for each tree trunk. But I did not do that. So they're a little bit flat. I did go in and add this touch of Viridian green to them, which I like. I think that added a good amount of detail. They were pretty flat before I did that. So just adding just simple little lines of another shade of green can really add a lot. And I did here add way too much green in one spot. And this is one of the things that I really like with working with gouache, is that I just added some more water to my brush and I blended the color out, and it was all fine. If I was using regular gouache instead of acrylic gouache, it would have been even easier. I just really like to be able to do multiple layers of stuff, which is why I don't generally paint with traditional gouache. Watercolor is really tricky for adding all sorts of layers, and acrylic is super forgiving for adding all sorts of layers. So acrylic is my happy place, but I really, really love the way that gouache moves on canvas, on paper, on pretty much everything. So gouache is my happy place, I've decided. I do still paint acrylic occasionally, but I prefer gouache. And here I had just been looking at it for a few minutes and decided that it didn't have enough depth, so I added my usual style of trees and some textury leaves in the front. And I think that honestly gave it the texture and the dimension that it needed. It just felt not quite right before I did that, and that just kind of pushed all of the other trees into the background, and I think that made it feel like there is some distance between you as a viewer and the trees in the background. So I liked that. And that's that one. And then we're back to the snail. I have actually painted one snail. I think I painted him the day after I filmed the video to show you guys all the paintings that I had finished this year. I did a snail, and I thought to myself, I should have waited to do that video until after I painted my snail. So I really like the other snail that I painted, and I just wanted to see if I could do it again. Like I said, I want to start doing other kinds of critters, and snails are adorable. They're so stinking cute. So I really want to get better at being able to paint things like snails. I think it could also be fun to do like ladybugs and cute bugs, not ugly bugs. No crickets for me, thank you. I might at some point try to do like a praying mantis, but that kind of seems boss level, and we're not at boss level yet, so we're painting snails. Snails, because they're kind of blobbish, are a little bit easier to paint. The trick with snail, or the tricky part with snails rather, is that they're a little bit sheer, which makes it kind of tricky to figure out how to paint them, because how do you paint them to be a little bit transparent but not have your background show through? Because the reference photo that I have, the snail is a little bit transparent and a little bit of the background green shows through him, but when I tried to paint that on my first snail, he just kind of looked like he was decaying. So it's a challenge. The shell, I think, too, is also very much of a challenge, but I think if I can get good at snail shells, that maybe next year I can do stuff like hermit crabs. Because again, I think doing some underwater creatures could be really fun, could add a really fun touch to the series. And I think that would just be a really fun challenge for me too, to do more underwater stuff. I haven't, like I said, I've only really done jellyfish, and I do them more like deep sea jellyfish. So I don't have a whole lot in the background. It's just water. And I think it would be really fun, a really fun challenge to do more coral reef type stuff. They're similar enough to the planty shaped things that I think I could do it. So definitely expect more underwater studies from me in future. I think that the snail actually came out really well. The snail shell, I am super pleased with. I was not expecting it to come out this nicely. I thought that it was going to be a bit rougher than that. I wasn't doing the side of the shell that has the swirl. I was doing the other side of the shell. I think most artists tend to do the side that has the swirl because it's cuter. But I just wanted to see if I could paint the other side of the shell and still have it be recognizable. And I definitely think that it is. And here they are, the two little mini paintings for today's video. One little snail and one little foggy woods. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in a couple weeks with a brand new one.